Was it you that said, oh, thank you, Mary? Wow. Okay, let me kind of tell you where we are. You can start finding your way to... Really? No, you leave it on. You think you're going to get the last... Put it on. Okay, all right, I got to tell you. So last night I get this. So we text back and forth with the musicians and Herschel on Saturday just about kind of, stuff. And so Dwayne texts me from the Preds game last night. And so we're texting back and forth. And he sends me a picture of, is it the mascot? It's a mascot. And I said, I didn't know Melissa was with you. And so she gets his phone and texts me back, I'm going to get you. That's what you call getting me? Oh, so I just looked down there and she's got this mask on. Hold it up. Put it on, Melissa, and stand up. Yeah, so that's her getting me. Oh, yeah. No, yeah. One time we got our house wrapped by some kids in the youth group at our church in Texas, and I did this on purpose. I really meant it. So I stood up on Sunday. I go, yeah, we got our house wrapped. Is that all you got? Are you serious? That's it? I found 2 or 3 little rolls of paper in the yard. The next morning, it looked like Winter Wonderland. I don't know how many rolls, 100 rolls at least. We had 18 pecan trees in our yard, and they are solid toilet paper. Our yard was forked. What you do is you take a plastic fork and you turn it upside down and stick it in the yard. The entire front yard was forked. It took me like 3 days to clean it all up. But I did it on purpose and asked for it. But I'm not doing that on purpose. Yeah, you just wait. Oh, man. Okay. So here's where we are. We're in the book of Numbers, and where we are in the story is Moses has led the children of Israel out of Egyptian bondage. They've wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. They finally come to the promised land. They were promised this 40 years earlier, and they were 11 days away. But because they disobeyed and murmured, it took them 40 years to go 11 days. And a whole generation of doubters and murmurers had to die out in the wilderness. And now here are their children. They've come to the Jordan River. And what we looked at last week is, where we are in the story, is Moses. Earlier, God, when they first came out, they didn't have water. And God said to Moses, I want you to strike the rock and water's going to come out. So they were at a place called Meribah. He hits the rock and water comes out, and they had water for 40 years. Well, this time, God says, don't strike the rock. Now I want you to speak to the rock. And the picture of, we looked at this a few Wednesday nights ago, it's a symbol of Jesus. Jesus, the rock of our salvation. He was struck on our behalf. Isaiah said, by His stripes we're healed. He was wounded for our transgressions. He took all of that beating, and so He has been struck, and He is to be struck no more. That's the picture of, and so now we don't have to strike the rock, we speak to the rock. Isn't that awesome? But Moses had this one little lapse, and he gets a little frustrated after 40 years of that. Can you imagine? Every day, 40 years, and finally he goes, boom, he strikes a rock, and God goes, because you did that, you don't get to go in. And so last week we looked at this question, really, God? Really? You're not going to let him in for that? Are you kidding? That's nothing. But what we learned is that Moses, who was given the law, is a symbol of the law, and the law cannot be broken. And so God, even though God loved him as a friend, they talked face to face, God said, you can't go in. No matter how you want to change the rules. Brooks and I had a conversation about that, about the running back from Georgia that sold his autograph for a couple of bucks. And Brooks is going, but he's a Heisman candidate. Doesn't matter. He broke the, so we had that. Never mind. All right. So anyway, that's kind of where we are. And that's the story. And so God has led Moses up on the top of Mount Nebo. And this, I'm telling you, so here's what you're going to see. Here's what I saw. You may not see it because I may not can pull it off. But here's some things, and I have a lot of questions that I had to ask myself, and I want you to share in the fun. We're going to ask ourselves a ton of questions today. And it's more about the questions than, because there's only 12 verses here. But in these 12 verses we're going to look at, here's what I see. I see the sweetness of God like I've never seen. And I hope you can see that. I see, well, there's a lot of things I see. So I want to show you those. So Numbers chapter 27, starting in verse 12. And then the Lord said to Moses, go up this mountain in the Abiram range, which is Nebo, and see the land I have given the Israelites. By the way, this isn't the sermon, but this is one of those that I want you to chew on. We have been given an inheritance. Whether we possess it yet or not, it has already been given. And God's going, in Jesus you have everything. And some of us still have not possessed all of Jesus. And so that's what I think of when we're... Okay, so... see the land I've given the Israelites. Okay, so remember, God had said to Moses, you don't get to go in. And yet God leads him up to the most unbelievable view of anywhere in the land. In fact, some scholars believe that the top of Nebo, you can see Canaan better than you can see Canaan inside of Canaan. And so here's God going, Moses, I can't let you go in, but I'm going to give you the best seat in the house. And so he leads him up and he goes, look what's here. Look what, all of these years that you've worked for this and you've brought these people, this is what they're all that you've prayed for and you've stood in the gap for them. This is the inheritance. And after you have seen it, you too will be gathered to your people as your brother Aaron was. For when the community rebelled at the waters in the desert of Zin, both of you disobeyed to honor me as holy. That's what we talked about last week. Verse 15. And so Moses said to the Lord, may the Lord, the God of the spirits of all mankind, appoint a man over this community to go out and come in before them. Let me keep going. I'll come back to that verse. And bring them in so that the Lord's people will not be like a sheep without a shepherd. And so the Lord said to Moses, take Joshua the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay your hand on him. Have him stand before the priest and the entire assembly and commission him in their presence. Give him some of your authority. The King James says honor, right? Is that right, Joe? Verse 20. Yeah. Thine honor. Give him some of thine honor. No. Give him some of your honor so that the whole community will obey him. He is to stand before Eleazar the priest, who will obtain decisions for him by inquiring of the Urim before the Lord. At his command, he and the entire community of the Israelites will go out, and at his command they will come in. Moses did as the Lord commanded him, so he took Joshua and had him stand before the priest and the whole assembly. He laid hands on him and commissioned him as the Lord instructed through Moses. Okay. Verse 18 says, Joshua the son of Nun, in whom is the Spirit. Wow. What a thing to have said of you, especially by God. God says, oh, Joshua the son of Nun, oh, he has the Spirit in him. So here's my first question. What is my reputation in heaven? What is my reputation? What comes out of God's mouth when he speaks about Bobby Price? What is in Bobby Price according to God? Man, what does God say about me? So how did Joshua get to be this man? How did Joshua get to be the man in whom is the Spirit? Part of it was that he had been with Moses since his youth. Where is that verse? I'm so far away. I'll find that verse in a sec. So part of it had been, he had been with Moses since he was a youth. It said he was his aide since he was a youth. And so that leads me to another set of questions. It's like, who am I following? So like Joshua had been following Moses for 40 years. Joshua followed every move. So here's a question for you. Have you looked behind you lately to see who's following you? Because someone wants to be just like you. And when they get to be just like you, what is going to be in them? So what will it be said of them in heaven when that person who is following you and wants to be just like you, and some of your honor is put inside of them? What are they going to look like? One of my favorite quotes, this is apart from, one of my favorite quotes says this: children, this is about parenting, and I'll just get back. Children follow in the footsteps that their daddy thought he covered up. Wow. How you like that one, Dennis? Yeah. I know it is too much. Yeah. Someone wants to be like you. Someone wants to be like me. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Then here's the next question I've got to ask myself. Would I want to follow me? Would you want to follow you? Okay. So it says of him, a man in whom is the Spirit. See, having the Spirit is the one indispensable thing. You can not have a lot of other things, but to have the Spirit, that's indispensable. Nothing that Joshua had to do could be done without it. I mean, what was coming? See, Moses was the guy to lead them to this place, and now he wasn't. Now it was Joshua's turn. And nothing that was ahead could he do without being filled with the Spirit. Others beside Joshua had qualifications that he had. He had all of these other kind of qualifications, but because they didn't have the Spirit, they weren't qualified to do what he was called to. Even Caleb. I mean, you look at Caleb, and the truth is, if you look at Caleb's life, you go, why wasn't he the leader? I mean, he had some unbelievable qualities. He was one of the spies, just like Joshua. He was a warrior. He was all of these things, and yet he didn't have this particular qualification. He seemed to be even bolder than Joshua, and yet it wasn't enough to make him the leader. See, those kind of qualities make a great martyr. They just don't make a great leader. And it took someone special for this. Okay. So then, in verse 18, and so the Lord said to Moses, take Joshua the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay your hand on him. Lay your hand on him and give him some of your honor. Give him some of your authority. And so here's the first picture which the New Testament took, and it talks about laying hands on, and now it's throughout the church where we lay hands on people and pray over them. We lay hands on the sick. We laid hands 2 weeks ago on Benjamin Howell, anointing him, recognizing the authority of a deacon in him. So this is where the whole idea of laying on of hands comes from. Okay, and so God said, I want you to lay your hands on him, so that and give him some of your authority. Deuteronomy chapter 34. Jot this one down. I'm here. Deuteronomy 34:9 says this. Now Joshua the son of Nun was filled with the spirit of wisdom because Moses had laid his hands on him. So when Moses laid his hands and prayed, that's when the spirit of wisdom came on, or entered into, whatever terminology you want to use, onto Joshua. And so the Israelites listened to him and what the Lord had commanded Moses. He was so here's another set of questions that I have. And listen, you have to jot these down. I want you to take them home and really wrestle with these things. it's not just enough to just hear this and let it go in one ear and out the other. We all have to work through these things, okay? And so here are some questions about these verses. What is being transferred out of me? See, God said, I want you to lay your hands, I want you to transfer some of what's in you. And so I go, ooh, what? That was my bad. I hit my... What is being transferred from me? Another way to say that is, what will my Joshuas be full of? Ooh. What will the Joshuas in my life, the people who are following me, this whole front row here and part of the second row, but what will those Joshuas be full of because of what has been transferred from my life? Do I want my children to get what I have? Wow. Will my Joshuas benefit if, quote, some of my honor is put on them? So, all right. So, Moses on Nebo, and he's looking with his own eyes at this land that he had spent 40 years waiting for and praying for and suffering for, and it was worth it. He's looking at it, and it's just unbelievable. And so here's another set of questions. At the end of my life, will what I am living for be worth it? At the end of my life, what I'm spending my time doing today, what I'm spending my money on today, what I'm giving my life to, when I stand on Mount Nebo at the end of my life, am I going to go, that was worth everything? Because Moses, he's looking, he's going, wow, this was worth everything I suffered, everything I went through. This was worth it to get to see this. And I'm looking, and I honestly, I've been like just taking my life apart this week, dissecting it into pieces and going, how about this part of me? Is this worth the investment of my life? Is this worth the investment of all of my time? Is this... So you gotta wrestle through those kind of things. And if it's not, it's got to go, right? So get out a pen and paper and start taking little notes and going, that's worth it. Yeah, that's worth it. Those kids, yeah, they're worth it. This marriage, yeah, that's worth it. This, I don't think so. That's got to go. All right. I don't want to put words in your mouth. And if it's not, what needs to happen? What changes need to be made? I don't want to stand at my Mount Nebo and go, what did I do with my life? I don't want to have one regret. Therefore, today, I'm going to ask these questions. Okay. So, like I told you earlier, one of the things about this whole progression here is what stands out to me is the sweetness of God in this passage. Moses could have died in gloom. I mean, on one hand, he doesn't get to go in. On the other hand, he's still in the wilderness, basically. He could have died angry and bitter at these people that cost him. I mean, he didn't blame anybody, but they cost him getting into the promised land. But God set it up so when Moses leaves, he leaves with great joy. Okay, watch this. He looks down, he's up on the mountain, and he looks down in Canaan, and he sees 600,000 men, warriors, ready to go in and fight for it, being led by this protege of his that God had just said, oh, by the way, see, notice Moses didn't choose Joshua. Notice that. My guess is that Moses had thought about, Joshua might be the guy. But Moses never assumed. He didn't presume on God. He goes, God, who's going to be this leader? It's going to be Joshua. Oh, that makes my heart glad. I mean, there are these things in these 12 verses. You see this, like God is, it's almost like God's trying to outrun him, going, I've got this answer for you, and this, and this, and this. You're going to die so full of joy. And so he looks at these 600,000 men ready to go in and conquer this gorgeous land he sees, and they're being led by like a son to him who's been nurtured under him for 40 years. Excuse me. There's this tabernacle. There's the Ark of the Covenant. I mean, all of these things that mean the world to him, and they're all there, all fixing to go into the promised land. And the view, and it's God was answering his requests. It's almost like God is running forward to meet all of Moses' wishes, and the cup of dying Moses is running over. Listen, that's the heart of God. Another thing we were talking about, and I don't want to go. Listen, if you don't have Sunday school, you ought to just come and listen to the conversations during the 8 o'clock hour. 8 o'clock? I don't want to, but I mean, it's just fascinating. It's really. But we were talking about these misconceptions that we have of God. Like, why is it that something happens and immediately we go to God must be punishing me. There must be unconfessed sin in my life. It means all of these things. But here we see we see the other side of God going, wait a minute. My heart is for you. I want to answer. I want to answer your prayers. I want you to die with joy. I want you to be full of joy. I want you to be full of life. I want to pour my Spirit out on you. That's the heart of God. Where in the world have we got this wrong conception, this misconception of God? Okay. Then verse 15. I'm jumping around, I know. Moses said to the Lord, may the Lord, the God of the spirits of all mankind, appoint a man to go out and come in before them, one who will lead them out and bring them in, so the Lord's people will not be like sheep without a shepherd. So I find that fascinating. Of course, Moses was a shepherd, right? Remember, he worked for his father-in-law Jethro in Midian, and for 40 years he tended sheep for his father-in-law. And so it's only natural that he takes that skill set and all the things that God taught him through them and applies them to the people. And now here he is, and he makes allusion to them being sheep. See, Moses had dealt with Israel's sheep nature his entire career. And now he's thinking, watch this, stay with me. And so, I don't know that he's thinking this, but it's almost like he's going, God, they're going to be as helpless in Canaan as they are in the wilderness. Because they're sheep. They have sheep natures. And so, from his point of view, he's looking in and he sees this pasture inside, and he sees the pasture is rich, the pasture is abundant, the pasture is so much better than what they just came out of. But they're sheep, and they're going to need guidance to make full use of the pasture. They need to be shepherded, God. And so would you send them someone that knows how to shepherd sheep? See, Canaan, the sheep privileges get better in Canaan. The pastures are better. There are a lot more privileges. And the possessions will be greater. But when the privileges are greater and the possessions are greater, there's going to be more attack. And there's going to be more danger of attack because of what's there. And so there needs to be more defense. So here, but watch this. Weak and strong are relative terms. So a sheep is strong enough to get out, like there's a fence that keeps them away from things, or a fence that keeps them in something. So they're strong enough to rebel against the fence. They're strong enough to find a way out of these restraints, but they're not strong enough to repel the danger once they get out of what they were just strong enough to get out of. That's a tongue twister, right? Are you with me? And so therefore they need a shepherd. So Moses had been a shepherd, both literally and figuratively, and his experience in Midian had sharpened his senses to where when he says this thing, he's talking about leading them for 40 years. And so he knows that a shepherd is supposed to be out in front of the sheep. You don't drive sheep like an oxen. You don't you put an ox on and you whip him and you go, yeah, yeah. That's my Western days. All right, no, but you don't drive sheep. You lead sheep. Sheep are drawn, not pushed. And so Moses is going, Father. I don't know if I wrote this down. I did. Okay. Moses, he's hearing he's fixing to die, and his first thought, the paramount feeling in his heart, is concerned for the honor of the Lord and for the good of Israel. And so he knows they need a successor. See, here's the funny thing. Most of us don't want to know our successor. Most of us, it's like, and yet Moses is praying for his. Oh God, bring them someone they're going to need. He wants to leave things in good hands. Okay. So the shepherd must lead the sheep. So he goes before them, but he can't go too far before them. I mean, it's tricky to be a shepherd. Moses gets that. A shepherd's supposed to be out in front, but if he's too far out in front, he can't truly lead them. So he has to earn their trust, and so he stays at a certain place out in front so that they follow, that they're drawn to him. Sheep are drawn. And so the one who knows the hearts of these million people knows the one that he's going to call to lead them. And so Moses' prayer gets answered, and he's thrilled because it's Joshua. And then lastly, when Moses laid his hands on Joshua, I want you to watch this. Deuteronomy chapter 31 has what he says. Deuteronomy 31. Sounds like my phone ring, but mine's in my office. Okay. Chapter 31, verse 7. Then Moses summoned Joshua and said to him in the presence of all Israel. Okay, so he brings Joshua up and he lays his hands on him, and then he speaks this. Watch this. Joshua, be strong and courageous, for you must go with this people into the land that the Lord swore to their forefathers to give them. And you must divide it among them as their inheritance. The Lord himself, Joshua, the Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Wow. Can you imagine? Can you imagine watching that? Here's Moses, Father Moses. He lays his hand on the one who's to come and he speaks those things. Don't be afraid. Okay, so remember that. Okay, now turn to Joshua chapter 1. Like 2 pages over. Okay, so that was the words coming out of. I hope you can stay with me on this jump to see this. We're almost done. Stay with me. So that was Moses speaking over Joshua. Now I want you to hear God speaking over Joshua. Okay, Moses chapter 1. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' aide. Okay, so now God is speaking to young Joshua. Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the great sea on the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. Okay, listen to these words. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous. Have we heard that before? because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them. Whoa, wait a minute. What? That's just what was said. Moses just said that, right? Moses said the same thing. Be strong and very courageous. Hey, Moses said that too. Be careful to obey all the law of my servant. Moses said that too. And so I'm reading those two things like side by side, and I'm here. It sounds so similar, and so here's the thought I get. You know what? Those who walk with God talk like God. Those who walk with God like Moses did sound just like God. Funny how that happens. What's coming out of your mouth? When you open your mouth to speak, does it sound like God speaking? It makes me want to be sure to walk with those. See, here's the deal. If those that walk with God talk like God, then I want to walk with those who talk with God. That's why Dennis Welch and I are friends. Seriously, Proverbs chapter 13. He who walks with the wise will be wise. Listen, you better start paying attention who you're walking with. I want to walk with people that talk like God, because that means if they talk like God, they've been with God and all this time, therefore they talk like God talks. And so when they speak to me, speak into my life, I can pretty much bank on, wow, they've been praying for me. They've been whatever. Seriously, listen to me, young people. Don't just let this one slide by you. You may need to lose some friends, because if they don't talk like God, you don't need them. But Pastor Bobby, I'm going to lead them to Jesus. Really? Why don't you let somebody else? No, I'm playing. I'm really not. It's amazing what we say sometimes. Yeah, I want to lead them to Christ. Well, okay. So they sound similar. These Deuteronomy and Joshua, the words of Moses, the words of God sound similar. Those who walk with God talk like God. So here are my questions. Am I walking with the right people? Are the people that I walk with hearing God? And do the people I walk with cause me to want to hear God? Do I cause them to hear God? I don't want to embarrass myself, Dennis, and go, do I cause you to hear God? Well, really, no. Okay, no. Here's the last question I want to ask. Am I leaving the ones who are following me more of Canaan or more of the wilderness? It is true that there is someone who's following you that wants to be just like you. And so in their following, are they getting more of Canaan or more of the wilderness? I mean, when Moses gets to this place, he has brought them through the wilderness and he is leaving them with Canaan. And so I ask myself this question, wow, what about the people I'm around? When I leave, it's like, wow. I mean, I'm just thinking of people in my life. And when I'm with them and they walk away, I'm going, oh, God, thank you. Thank you for him. Thank you for her. Because they make me to hunger after you. Or I go, wow. I feel like further in the wilderness than I was an hour ago. No, I'm playing. So, what do we do with those questions? Let me just ask you, all right? So, you can turn that off, Herschel. So, what did you